So things didn't go according to plan. I was supposed to do a Steel Hunters video like 2 days ago, but it turns out you sign a non-disclosure agreement upon playing the beta, so that's not an option anymore. So what are we doing instead? Fish Talk Part 2, Electric Eel Boogaloo, baby, that's right. And I am now realizing as I said that out loud, there's actually not an electric eel segment in here, which, hindsight's 2020, mistakes were made. I'll do that on the next one, or oh, whatever, you don't care. I still don't want to talk about saltwater fish the complete duration of the video because, as you know, I hold no fondness for the ocean. If the ocean were a person, I would build a house on sacred Indian burial grounds and then convince the ocean to move in. I do not care about generational. I want this beef to go all the way up to supernatural. I want a poltergeist to turn his youngest kid into a salt shaker, and then, in fear, the ocean will hastily move out of the house, forgetting the salt shaker. You see, he didn't know that his kid was turned into a salt shaker. Then I will go into the house, get the salt shaker, revert his kid from salt shaker form, and raise him as my own, feeding him thoughts of vengeance for the father that abandoned him. And then once they meet for their final showdown, I'll just drop a Steinway piano on both of those dick wrenchers. I do not care. Today we're talking about fish found in brackish waters. And no, not brackish as in the word your Vietnamese mother-in-law uses to describe people who talk during movies. We are talking brackish water, which happens when salt water mixes with fresh water, usually when rivers meet the ocean. Why is this an interesting topic? Because it's really the only place where we see freshwater and saltwater species interacting with one another. And in case you weren't aware, there's another species that really loves to populate coastal areas. Can you guess what it is? Well, it's actually crocodiles and alligators and other kinds of reptiles, but it's also humans. So you can imagine some very weird things end up occurring when all of this randomness intersects. And that's exactly what I want to talk with you about today. We're going to start off with fish you have probably heard of, and then get progressively weirder as the video rolls along. First up to bat, it's a classic, we got the pufferfish. Pufferfish are weird little guys. Although they are spiky, most people kind of treat them like hedgehogs or Reddit users. Fat and relatively harmless until they touch you. But just like those Reddit users, this bloated little guy is full of nasty shit that you want to be nowhere around. If presented with the opportunity to eat pufferfish, just pass. The juice is not worth the squeeze. There is a very good reason that you need a license in order to prepare this fish. That reason is the potent neurotoxin that the pufferfish forms in its liver. In addition to being a nippy little bastard with a beak like a razor blade, this fish evolved itself a revenge mechanism. Even if you vomit immediately after ingesting one cooked improperly and are admitted to the hospital, you're still looking down the barrel of at least a 60% mortality rate. Yes, the fish is poisonous, not venomous. If you're unaware, you can eat venomous animals as long as you aren't eating the venom. However, don't touch pufferfish under any circumstance with your bare skin anyway. Their skin is coated with this toxin as well, although in a smaller dose. Any open wounds on your hands could result in your death. And before you say, but I don't have cuts on my hands. Yeah, that's what all the spikes on the fish are for, dipshit. Next up, the legendary Barracuda. The animators at Nemo were dead on in their depiction about this absolute demon. Easily capable at clocking in at 6 feet, that's 2 meters, these silver bullets are unfathomably fast. They are capable of going 0 to 40 faster than your brain can process the movement. How would I know? I've watched one kill another fish about 4 feet away from me underwater. I want to make this clear, I am not a small man. About 6'5", 200 some odd pounds, and this 3-foot fish made me feel completely helpless within its environment. I had been swimming with sharks minutes before, not a bit of fear in my bones. But this thing? I felt like I was a pretty blonde in a slasher movie. So there I was, looking directly at this King Von-ass fish as it's hanging in the shadows underneath a reef. I am transfixed, mostly because he's mean-mugging the fuck out of me, and I don't want to take my eyes off of it. So, in the meantime, I end up curling all my fingers in, because I want to keep those. Then, in the time that it took me to blink, he was completely gone. The only sign of where it went was a silver blur, a trail of bubbles, and the falling bits of flesh left from a bait fish it fucking annihilated right by my head. It was one of the more unsettling moments in my life. It was worse than most of the times I've almost died. Now we've got better memories from that same trip. It's time for tarpons. Reaching a potential 8 feet, that's 2.5 meters, tarpons are straight up bone-tipped meat missiles, and I'm gonna have to rephrase that because it sounds too much like an Elton John wet dream. You know, I heard someone say analystize the other day. This is not related to anything, but I'm saying it anyway. That shit pissed me off. It's just like when people say drowned or de-thawed. I just immediate rage. Anyway, these are similar to the arapaima of the last fish talk, the only real difference being these reside primarily in salt water as opposed to fresh. Well, that and their surfacing habits. Arapaima need to surface in order to breathe. It's an adaptation they've developed to survive in oxygen-lacking environments. Tarpon, on the other hand, surface like an ICBM launch. It's one of the reasons they're highly sought after by fishermen. The fight and challenge this fish brings to the table is otherworldly if you hook one. I actually went to an experience where you could feed tarpon by hand. They kind of hop out of the water. If you let your hand hang too long, they will bite you. But they're just really bony-mouthed, so it actually doesn't hurt at all. They have a pretty weak bite, all things considered. Our next flesh torpedo... Fuck, that was even worse than the one before. Our next big-ass fish looks like it's primed to be the antagonist of an Ice Age movie. However, they're actually pretty chill unless you're being mistaken for a bait fish. Showing up to represent at a potential 10 feet, that's 3 meters, ladies and gentlemen, the alligator gar. This is my second spot in the running of top 5 fish that have ever been fish. Sadly, these fish have suffered greatly from a case of mistaken identity in the past, and still do a little bit now. Something bit a kid in murky water way the fuck back when, and for a few years these big sleepy logs were killed with reckless abandon. Maybe next time you shouldn't let your cum trophy play in muddy water. I have no qualms with blaming the victims of animal attacks that occurred in animals' natural habitats, by the way. If it's an invasive species, different scenario, fix that problem. But if you go into the woods and a bear kills you, you should have learned how not to suck before you went into the woods. Anyway, back to the point. The alligator gar is an awesome fish. It's nearly bulletproof, and obviously if you shoot it with a 50 cal, it's going to blow up, but I think it's stopped 45 before, which is pretty impressive. And all things considered, they're just cool as hell. We are now downsizing our subjects as I present to you the Pacu. This is an interesting little fish that you may recognize, or at the least, you recognize its distant cousin, the red-bellied piranha. Probably the most vilified fish in all of media, but these ones are vegetarian, mostly. Turns out Jeff Goldblum was right. Life does find a way, and for the Pacu, the vegan diet just wasn't cutting it. Turns out when your population gets super high and all you eat is vegetation, budget cuts need to be made eventually. Because as the Pacu quickly learned, once you eat all of the vegetation, there's only one thing left to eat: other fish. These fish are still primarily vegetarian, that's ingrained in their genetics. However, it's not unfamiliar territory for them to take a bite out of another fish or even a person if the opportunity strikes. As a matter of fact, these little bastards got the nickname of ball cutter in some tribal communities who wash themselves in rivers without pants. You can put 2 and 2 together as to what happened. With a return to form, allow me to introduce to you the Goliath grouper. I have seen them in person, and let me tell you this. Be incredibly happy that they are not interested in preying upon humans. This is our biggest fish today, sizing up at an incredible 8 feet, 2.5 meters, and 800 pounds, 360 kilograms, at their peak. For a frame of reference, Andre the Giant was 7'4" and 520 pounds at his biggest. This fish has Jabba the Hutt aura. What I mean by that is the big bastard knows you can't fuck with him, and he will behave accordingly. They will bite or charge if threatened, and they will get food aggressive, but they don't have a strong bite or very dangerous teeth. They may also get pretty territorial, but as I said, they don't pose real threats if you're not a complete fuckwit. Plus, they tend to reside around caves in very clear water, so there's no mistaken identities like those asshole catfish. If you see one, it's best just to keep your distance, not that most people would think of approaching an underwater tank to begin with. I think the next time around I'll do reptile or mammal talk. And just another tangent, I like the show Invincible, and there's a lot of talk this season about poor animation quality. First of all, you're mostly wrong. Second, I don't know why the hell anyone is talking about bad animation quality. There has been 3 straight filler episodes that could all have been condensed into one. That's way worse than bad animation. That's wasting 3 hours of your time. You only get like 8 episodes a season. Make them mean something. There's a whole ass war and an old man that we need to kill by the end of the season, and the new Avatar installation is probably going to fucking suck as well. Anyway, the gaming Discord is in the description if you're so inclined. You guys have a good one.